Now that we have our project, which is a basic CRUD project, before I proceed further, I want to divide this project in an n-tier architecture. We will have to create multiple projects within our solution of Abby. So let me right click on the solution here. We will add a new project. When we want to work with an n-tier architecture, we want to have a separate project for data, then we will have our models in a separate project, and lastly we will have a utility project that will be for basic functionalities like sending emails, holding all the constants, and so on. All of them will be a class library project. So if you search for class here, we have a basic C# class library. Let me select that, and we need to give this a name. First, let me create one for abby.dataaccess. This project will be responsible for all the database related operation. So everything that we have inside the data folder in Abby Web will be moved to the new project. Let's hit next here and create that using .NET 6. Let me hit the create button. Before I proceed further, let me go to Abby Web here and click on Manage NuGet Packages. If you go to the Updates tab here, new version of .NET 6 has been released, which is RC1, the release candidate. So let me select all the NuGet packages and update them to the latest version. Perfect, so now our project is using .NET 6 RC1. That looks good. Let's go to the class library, and here if we examine the project file, you will notice it is using .NET 6. So that's perfect. Let's create one more project. Now we have class library in recent project templates, so we can select that directly, and the next project will be the models. So we will say abby.models. Last one that I want to create will be for utilities. So new project, it will be abby.utility. Perfect, so we have added 3 more projects in our solution. Let me remove the default class file that is present in all the 3 projects. Once we remove all the 3 files, let's continue in the next video and make changes to move all the first project that we want to work on is the models project. So if we expand the models here, we don't have any files or folder. What we want to do is we can directly drag this model folder inside the abbyweb.models. In there we just have one model, which is the category model. We will have to update the namespace because we moved that from abbyweb.models to this new location. So now the namespace will be abby.models.model. So abby.models, and inside there we have a folder called model. We can remove this folder and move the category file directly inside the models project. We don't need this folder anymore. So then the namespace will just be abby.models. Once we make that change, next we have to remove this models because we do not need that anymore. So we will right click on the models and let's delete that folder. Once we delete that folder, if we try to build our project, that will fail because now we have to reference our category that is inside abby.models project. So the build is failing here, but we will fix that later on. Next, what we want to do is we also want to move all of our data inside our data access. So let me expand data access, that is empty. I will drag the data folder inside data access. We will remove the data folder here, and perfect. Now you might be thinking, what about migrations? Migrations will be created inside the data access folder. So if you want, you can move the folder directly inside data access, but then you will have to change the namespace. But this time I want to show you how you can start fresh. And the reason behind that is many times what happens is when you are working with Entity Framework Core and you are just getting started, you make some mistake in the migration and then everything gets corrupt if you delete a file there. You don't know how to start again or what to do. In that case, what you have to do is pretty simple to start fresh. First thing that you will do is wherever you have all the migrations, you can just delete that folder altogether. After that, you need to add the migrations once again. But since the migrations are deleted, you will have to go back to SQL Server and you will have to actually delete that database because we are starting fresh again. So we will go back to our SQL Server and we will delete the Abby database. Let's do that. Perfect, the database is gone. Then before we add the migrations, we have to change the namespace of this project. This will be abby.dataaccess.data. So abby.dataaccess.data. Now with this change, we have lots of error messages here, and the reason behind that is we do not have the NuGet packages in this data access folder. We added them inside abby.web for SQL Server and Entity Framework Core, but we moved the application DB context to our data access project. So now here, if you do control dot, it will display that you can install the package Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. I will install the latest version, which is my local version as well. Next, we do not need this using statement of abbyweb.model because it does not exist inside the abbyweb anymore. The category class is now inside abby.models. So if you do control dot here, it will have a helper to add reference to abbyweb.models. Let's add that. With that, our data access looks good and we do not have any errors in the data access or our models project. But now there is no data folder or models inside the Abby web. It needs to reference the other two projects that we created. So if you build the project, you will see lots of error messages. There we go. We need to solve all of them before we proceed. Let's do that in the next video. If we try to run using IIS Express, you will see lots of error in our project. We need to fix all of these error messages, so let me pin that. Let's go through them one by one. Most of them will be related to the using statement and namespace. Like here, we have abbyweb.data and models. We don't need them, so we will delete them. And then now the application DB context is inside the data access project. So if you press Control dot here, it will show you to add the reference to abby.dataaccess. Similarly, for category, we will have to add the models project. Let me fix those errors in all the other files. With iLogger, we will have to add Microsoft.extensions namespace. Let me do that in all the files. The last one here is inside program.ces. Let me fix that and add all the using statements. Perfect. With that, everything looks good. Let's run the application and see what happens. We just need a confirmation that application should load. We deleted our database, so if we click on categories, we should see some exception. Let's see that. And perfect, our login failed. So now we need to create our database. We started fresh. So what we did is inside the data access, we just have our DB context. But we need to add migrations to create our database. So far what we used to do is inside Tools, we go to NuGet Package Manager. In Console, we just add a migration. I will call it Add Category to DB and press Enter. You will see an error right here. In the error message, it displays your target project AppyWeb does not match your migration assembly data access. That is because our migrations will be inside the data access. In order to fix that, we will keep the startup project as abby.web, but the default project inside the package manager console will be the one where we have our DB context, which is the data access project. Once we change that, and if we run the command one more time, this time the migration gets added successfully, and you can see a new folder with migrations was created inside the data access project. But then if you examine the migrations that are opened here, we have red squiggly lines. In order to fix the red squiggly lines, if you go on migration and press Ctrl dot, it will show that you have to install a NuGet package for Microsoft.EntityFramework.Core.Relational. Now if we examine our Appy web project and go to Dependencies, Packages, you will notice we do not have the same package, but we also did not see any errors. Why was that? That is because we have Entity Framework Core.Tools, and if you expand that inside the design, we already have Microsoft.EntityFramework Core.Relational. So rather than installing this sub-package, we can just install the package Entity Framework Core.Tools. So let's do that. Manage NuGet Packages. I clicked on the data access. Let's go to Browse tab, and IntelliSense is suggesting us to install Entity Framework Core.Tools. We will install that and everything should work. Then if you examine the AppyWeb, we also have a package for SQL Server. So let me install that as well. And here when I'm installing, I just noticed I'm installing .NET 5. I want to use .NET 6 to be consistent with the application, so I will update the tools package as well. So inside updates, let me update that to .NET 6. And that should be all the packages that we need. So let me close this. The errors in migration goes away. Let me open up the package manager console and run the command update database one more time. This time it should complete successfully. And perfect. That looks good. Let me go back to SQL Server here and see if the database got added. Perfect. It will have the table for category. So with that, we have done quite a few things in our project. Now our project has multiple class libraries and we have n-tier architecture. On top of that, what I showed you is while you are learning Entity Framework Core, it could happen that your database gets corrupted, or when you add migration, it starts giving you weird errors. Now if you're just getting started with Entity Framework Core, solving them will be very tricky. So what I would highly recommend is delete the SQL Server database, delete all the migrations, and then go to Package Manager, add new migrations, and run the command update database. That will create a fresh database with all the tables as you can see. As you can see right here. So with that, let's continue from the next video. Before we move forward with the application, let me close all the tabs here, and what we want to do is organize our pages in a much cleaner way. Right now inside pages we have categories and we will be adding many folders down the road. But typically what happens is in an application there is an admin side and there is an end-facing customer side. So for that inside pages, let me create two more folders. Let me add one folder which will be for admin, and let me add one more folder which will be for customer. Then we will move this categories folder inside the admin folder. So that way, everything related to admin, we will place that inside the admin folder, and everything related to customer will be directly inside the customer folder. With that, there will be few changes that we have to make. The first thing is, if we examine the page model of create, you can see it is inside Appy Web pages and categories. But now we have one more section here, which is admin. So we will add that to all of the pages. If you examine the CS.html file, we will have to make the same change right here. So inside categories, now it cannot find the create model because we have the .admin and then we have categories. So if you make any changes to the namespace of the CS file, you will also have to implement the same thing inside the view. So let me save this for create and make the same changes for all the other pages inside categories. Once you make all of the changes, all the error messages or the red squiggly lines should go away. Like right here, it is not going away. Let me close all the tabs here. Let me open edit one more time. It is still giving us the same error message with the edit model, but everything looks good. Let me restart the application. Sometimes it takes a while for Visual Studio when you change the namespace, so it's best to restart and see what's the output. Let's examine edit here, and great, now it is recognizing everything. Let's run our application and try to create a category with our new database. This time your navigation will not work, because if you go to shared_layout, if you examine the navigation for categories, it is inside the categories folder. But we added one more folder, so let's add admin there, save it, go back and refresh this, and let's click categories. And perfect, this looks good. Let's create a new category here with the display order of 1, and perfect. That is working as expected. So with this change, let's continue in the next video. Before we move on to our first assignment, I want to add a drop-down here, so that way when we add more properties that admin can manage, it will be available in a drop-down. So let me switch back to our application, and we will have to make that change inside _layout. So for that, let me open up the boot swatch and let's see the themes that we have. Now here, if we scroll down, we have this Lux theme which has a light background. I want to use a light background theme for this course because Data Tables has some issue with styling the dark template right now. This will of course be fixed down the road, but right now that is one issue. So let's download the Lux theme that we have. We can download the complete CSS. And let me copy this. Let's go back while the application is running. We have inside www.root CSS. Let me paste it here. And let's go back to the top. I'll just add a comment here that this is Lux theme. With that change, let's go back and refresh here. And perfect. You can see the new theme in action. One thing that I want to change is the dark navigation. So if we click on preview here, this is the dark navigation. We have background primary. Let's go back to our _layout where we have BG dark. We will make that primary. We will do the same in footer. And let's refresh this. Perfect. Now let's work on the drop down here. Let's go back to the theme. We have drop down in the navigation. Let's open that up. Let me copy this li element here and we will paste that right here. Save this, go back and refresh, and drop down's working. Let's add categories inside that drop down. So I will cut these categories and paste it right here. I will leave the divider here, save this, remove the empty li element, and the text we need to make it dark. Rather than text dark, we can just give it a class of dropdown item. Let's go back and see if this helps. Perfect, looks good. Let me also change the text from dropdown to admin. And perfect. So now inside admin, we can manage categories. With that in place, let's go to our assignment from the next video. Now that we have practiced a CRUD operation with category, I want you to take an assignment. For that assignment, I want you to create a new model which will be food type. And that model will have two properties, ID and name. So food type will be the new table name and it will only have two columns, ID and name. And then I want you to create CRUD operations just like we did on category. So you should be able to perform create, edit and delete functionalities, and I want validations on name that it is a required field. I want you to implement the client-side and server-side validations. This will be a recap of everything that we did, but this time you will be making modifications in multiple projects as compared to everything in a single project because now we have entire architecture. This should be pretty quick because it is exactly same as what we did with categories, but this time we only have two properties, ID and name. So you should also be able to copy all the views as well as razor pages and make modifications. So good luck with the assignment, and before you watch my solution in next video, I would highly recommend to practice it so that you get much more understanding with what we have done so far. Now we need to work on our assignment where we have to create the food type model. So let me switch back to the application. The first thing that we have to do here is we have to create a new model for food type. So I will just copy and paste category one time here. I will call that as food type. We will copy the class name and paste it inside the food type class. Here we do not want any display order, so we can remove that. The only two properties that we want is name and ID. Once we add our model, we have to add this table in database. So we go to our DB context and we will create a DB set for food type. After we add our DB set, we need to create a migration and add this to database. So tools, package manager console. Let's add a new migration. We run into this error because the default project must be the data access. Let me run that command one more time. And perfect. Migration is created. Let's update the database to create this table in SQL Server. Let's go back and verify that, and looks good. Now the next thing is we want to perform the same CRUD operations that we did with category. So let me close all the tabs here. Where we have the pages, let's expand that, and we have our categories right here. Copy that and paste it one more time. Change the folder name to food types. Now you might be thinking that why am I not naming it food type and I'm adding a plural name right here. The reason behind that is if you are using the same name for model as the pages, then you will have to use the exact using statement with the complete path. Because it can be confusing when you say food type, is that a model or the folder you are referencing? So that is why I'm using plural for the pages location. Then we need to work on all of the individual pages. Let's open them one by one. Instead of categories, this time it will be food types. Let me change that model in all the files of food types. So that will be easy change right now. Perfect, that looks good. The next thing is the model will not be category here, it will be food type. So right now we are on the index, let's do that first. So you can see food type is inside model and this food type is a namespace. If we were using same name for both of them, then it will be confusing. Let's load that from database. And our get looks good. So index page model is great. Let's finish the index view. This will be food type here. Let me copy that. Create new food type. We only have the category name, no display order. Model will have food types, no display order here. And this looks good. Let me save this. Let's work on the edit page model next. We will have food type here. And we will change that in all the places. We don't have this custom validation. We will remove that. And we will replace our category with food type. Perfect. Looks good. Let's go to our edit page here. We need food type.id as a hidden property. Validations will be there for food type.name. And we have the update back to list button. Looks good. Our delete page model. Let's do the same with category. We will replace them. And this looks good. Let me save them. Go to our delete view. Do the same changes here. And perfect. The last one is the create. Let me do the same changes right here. We don't have the custom validation. We will just add food type. Looks good. In our create view, we will have create food type.name, no display order, and perfect. Finally, to see everything in action, we just need to add that in underscore layout, a new link. We will copy the existing categories link, and the folder name is food types. Let's run our application here. We have few errors. Let me see what that is. And yes, we do not have display order. We need to remove that. And we will run that one more time. We have our food types. Let's go there. And we will create a food type here. Let me create non-veg here. Looks good. Let's create a veg food type. And let me edit this to make sure all the CRUD operations are working. And perfect. Everything looks good. We have two food types that we have created. Now if we go back to our categories, let me delete the veg category here and create actual categories like appetizer, entree, and dessert. Great! So with this we have categories and food types in our project so far. Let's continue from the next week.